Welcome back to the channel today, guys, and the wait is finally over. Today, I'm bringing you guys episode 13 of the Eminence in Shadow. Now, if you guys can hear it, I feel significantly better than I have been the past couple days. I really do. Crazy what medicine and a lot of sleep will do, huh? Who'd have thunk it? But man, after a really dramatic ending we had last week, I went into this episode with, my expectations are through the roof. We're about to see some crazy stuff. Well, we see some crazy stuff, all right, but not in the way I want. One of my biggest takeaways from this episode is that Delta's a savage. Let's just get that out the way right now. Delta is an absolute savage. Like, what? Nelson is gonna go out sad. He went out sad in this episode. He's really gonna go out sad in the next episode with how it ends. So let's just kind of get into it and talk about the Eminence in Shadow, episode 13 today, because there's a pretty decent amount of stuff to talk about. So our episode begins directly where the last one left off, with Nelson trapping Alpha, Beta, Delta, Alexia, and Oriana in, I believe, the center of the sanctuary to attack them. And it's here we just see Delta just making light work of Nelson's clones and all that. They're nothing compared to her. But as she's fighting, she says that something isn't right here. As Alpha says, "It seems the closer we get to the center of the sanctuary, the more of your power will drain away." As Nelson says, "Did you not realize I was luring you right where I wanted you?" As Alpha continues and says, "Meanwhile, the closer you get to the center, the more power you gain, huh?" As Nelson's like, "Yup, I was hoping we could get a little closer to the center before we started, but this should be close enough." Boy, is he wrong. And with all these enemies around, Delta just gets more and more fired up. She's literally like a wild animal, guys. It's kind of wild. I kind of like it, though, you know? Like, hey, let her off her leash. She'll fuck some stuff up. And it's here we transition to Cid and Aurora as they get sent to this just decimated battlefield. As Cid says, "A battlefield devoid of all hope. And, unknown to all, an Eminence intervenes from the shadows." Yeah, that's a good one, Cid. That'll work. And as they're walking across this battlefield, I mean, like, it is actually decimated. Like, dead bodies are everywhere. As they come across another younger version of Aurora. As Cid says, "Look at that, you're crying again." She's like, "Yeah, I was a crybaby. It is what it is." And it's here that Aurora takes Cid's sword and goes to cut her old self down. But all of a sudden, the bodies spring up to life and attack her. And Cid has to save her. As Aurora says, "The sanctuary is rejecting us." As Cid comments that, "I guess it's like we're a virus to it." As Cid asks her, "By the way, what happens to you if you die here, perchance?" As Aurora says, "I'll probably get sent back to the first room." And Cid's like, "Damn, that really sounds obnoxious. I don't want to do this again." But it's here we transition to a pretty interesting scene, actually, in my opinion. As we transition to Epsilon and the rest of the shadows that were left behind, exploring the facility that they were in, as they come across, for all intents and purposes, a spirit. Now, some of the shadows get prepared to attack this thing, but Epsilon tells them to stand down and tells them, "Don't worry," as she approaches the spirit. And as she makes contact with it, it seems like the spirit is almost liberated, set free. As Epsilon says, "It's probably something similar to the goddess's trial. A memory that reacted to us and materialized." As the other shadows are like, "Us?" And Epsilon says, "Yes, us. The possessed." Because if you remember, all the members of the shadows, to my knowledge at least, were all a part of the possessed, which were the focal point of the experiments that the cult was doing in the previous episode. So it makes total sense that all these spirits would react to all of them because they're all the same. As Epsilon even says, "This would be us if we'd never met Lord Shadow." As one of them says, "With all this, we won't have to keep coming back for more information. We got it all right here." As Epsilon tells her, it's all just memories though. It won't be easy to take it with us. As they actually take out cameras and start taking pictures. And boy, their medieval world sure gets a lot of technological upgrades pretty quick, huh? But it's here. We have to get our obligatory fan service scene of the episode. And boy, Epsilon really gets exposed here. Her tits literally fall on the floor in front of them. I don't know if there's coming back from that. That's pretty bad. As she reattaches them with the quickness and says, ladies, something just happened here? I didn't see nothing. Did something just happen? I don't know. They're just like, no, ma'am, we didn't see your tits fall on the floor. We promise. Don't hurt us. And as we transition back to Cid and Aurora, they're making light work of these zombies. Like, they're not doing anything to them. As she even tells Cid, like, man, you're destroying them like a gorilla over here. Specifically, like a grown man slinging gorilla. How very specific. As Cid's just like, you don't have any cooler sounding metaphors than that. I'm the Eminence in shadow, damn it. As Aurora says, if there was a tournament for for humans, who can't use magic, you would win. As Cid says, I don't hate this god mode thing we got going right now, but with no magic, this could go on forever. As the zombies just keep on coming. And it's here that Cid actually draws his sword and approaches the young Aurora. And I don't know, the look that the real Aurora gives him in this scene, I don't know. It's really random, honestly, but I don't like it. It makes me feel like everything's not as it seems. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it. As Cid raises his sword and cuts her down and shatters the dream. And when the dream shatters, they awaken in this big-ass room, for lack of a better term. And they're met with a door that's heavily chained with a sword set in the stone. As Aurora tells Cid, that is the center of the sanctuary. And as we transition here to Nelson versus Delta again, can we even call this a fight anymore? This man. This man's running around for his life, basically, trying to stop her, and he can't. As he says, your magic's supposed to be limited. How can you still put up a fight? As she is just slaughtering him. It's not even close. Even Alexia, Oriana, and Beta are looking on like, oh, this is getting excessive. And even with her magic being drained away, Delta's still got enough slime for a G-string, baby, of course. We can't make this a rated R show, after all. As Nelson's like, did you really awaken all on your own? But the technique for that was lost ages ago. As we just hear Alpha say, was it really? And she gives him this really nice smirk I like, ha, you thought it was. As Nelson's like, whatever, I was prepared for this level of resistance. This is my full power. As Delta just starts charging up like this is Dragon Ball Z all of a sudden. With a giant ass club. Talk about intimidating, dude. As we hear Alpha say, it's the iron slab. As I imagine Delta just destroyed Nelson. So as we transition back to Cid and Aurora, as they're in front of this giant door, Cid asks her, so what are we supposed to destroy again? As she tells him the magic core. It should be on the other side of that door. As Cid tells her, well, I can't do it with this sword. It'll definitely break before it breaks the chains. As she tells him, did it not occur to you that we have a key to the door right here? As he approaches the sword in the stone, as she says, it's written right there on the sword that it can cut the chains. But Cid takes one look at the sword and says, I can feel it. I cannot draw this sword. As he tries to, but he can't pull it out, as he says, the sword is rejecting me. This sword can only be drawn by the chosen one. And Aurora's shocked to find that out. Like, what? The holy sword can only be drawn by direct descendants. So I imagine the only one who could draw it would be Alpha then at that point, right? She's a direct descendant of Olivier, so that would make sense. As Aurora's just like, so what do we do now? As Cid asks her, is there any other way through? And she tells him, not written here. So they both actually just sit down and wait. And as we transition to Delta's fight for the third time, even our spectators are getting kind of bored of it, because it's not even a fight at this point. As Delta is finally able to crack the dream that they're in and bring them back to reality. As Nelson says, how could you defeat over 100 clones without even breaking a sweat? As Alpha tells him, make as many copies as you like, but they still only have one brain. Even if there are 100 of them, unless they can move freely, they're no better than scarecrows, which is true. As Nelson, who knows he's in a bad situation and cornered, does something wild here. He calls forth Olivier, actually. But right as they're staring each other down, Epsilon tells Alpha that, hey, we finished the investigation. We're ready to make an exit at any time. As Alpha says, well, it's about time we excused ourselves then. Nelson's just like, what? You're just gonna run away? And Alpha's like, yeah, we have no interest in grunts like you or in uncertain memories. The fuck? Our only objective is to cut off the source of power. And now we know how the Sanctuary's defenses work. We'll visit you again, but next time, it'll be at a time of our choosing. As Nelson says, you think I'll just sit here and let you go? As Alpha, like a Chad, turns around and tells him, will you be coming after us then? And this man hides behind Olivier! What a coward! As they all actually leave right here, and Nelson's just like, whatever then. I got a good look at that Alpha's face. If we can get her blood, we'll be that much closer to perfecting the beads. But it's here all of a sudden that Nelson notices that some rats have wandered into the Sanctuary Center. As he actually brings Olivier with him to go deal with them. Now, I wonder who those intruders could be. And as we transition back to Cid and Aurora, Cid asks her, so, you want to disappear, huh? You said when we destroy the core, you'll disappear. As Aurora says, yeah, but rather than disappear, it would be more accurate to say, I'll be set free. This is a prison of memories that repeat into eternity. It's just a little too much for me. As Cid tells her, alright then, you want to wait a bit longer? Give it a little more time, and things will work out. As we see these symbols appearing on Cid's hands, which makes me think he's getting his magic back slowly. As he says, according to the formula, it's about time for the story's protagonist to make an entrance after all. And as a magic circle appears, Cid's like, there you are, protagonist! The hero's direct descendant who can draw the holy sword! And he's bald?! As Cid's just like, damn, is this one of those times when the bad guy gets there first and tries to stop the protagonist? Interesting. What am I supposed to do in this variation? As Cid notices Olivier and says, oh, that elf there looks just like a friend of mine, but that's not her. As Nelson just asks Cid, like, so, you brought Aurora out of her cage. As he says, sorry to disappoint, but the likes of you will never open that door. Bad luck for you, young man. I don't know where you wandered in from, but you let this witch deceive you, and now you're going to die. Olivier is going to cut you to pieces. As Cid and Olivier stare each other down, square up, and start fighting. And Cid's getting tossed around like a rag doll right now, but it doesn't look like it's doing anything, honestly. That being said, she is tossing him around like a doll, and she even breaks his sword. But our boy just starts smiling in this situation. As Nelson's just like, why on earth are you smiling? As Cid's like, oh, I guess I am smiling. As Olivier attacks him again. And this time she lands a clean hit on his shoulder, piercing him. But again, it doesn't look like it does anything. As Cid says, a battle without a conversation is just tedious. She doesn't have a heart. She doesn't answer any of my questions. Because if you guys remember a couple episodes ago, Cid was talking about how a battle is a conversation. But since Olivier is basically an empty husk right now, there's nothing to communicate with. As Aurora actually steps in and tries to save Cid here, like, that's enough, no human can beat her, you've done enough, you've given me more memories than I could have asked for. There's no need for you to die. And I love how the whole time this is going on, Cid's just, you can hear Cid in the episode saying, huh? What? What are you talking about? What? As Nelson tells Aurora, if you'd be willing to help me, I'd be willing to spare the boy's life. Sid's just like, what? As Nelson says, all you'll have to do is swear you'll work with us. And at this point, Sid's just like, all right, I've had enough. He's like, do I get a say in any of this? As Aurora says, I'm doing this for your sake, you dummy. And Cid tells her, I don't need your help. I've heard you guys talk, and I wish you'd stop assuming I'm gonna lose this fight. How insulting. As Cid tells Nelson, you and the witch just watch. And it's here that Nelson sicks Olivier on him, and she stabs him what looks like through the chest. And everyone looks shocked, except for our boy, who says, gotcha, as he opens up his eye, which he's had closed the entire episode. And our episode ends there. Now, if we didn't get that final scene, I was definitely going to ask, like, yo, why Cid got his eye closed the whole episode? He looks kind of stupid. But it makes total sense, because he clearly had a plan geared around his eye. What I'm going to guess what it is, maybe he was storing, like, magic in the eye or something. Or he was doing a spell and he needed to keep his eye closed for it or something. I don't know. Something like that. There had to be a reason he was looking goofy all episode with his eye closed. But this is a good episode, you know? We're going to see the conclusion of our Sanctuary adventure next week. And I imagine Cid's going to go crazy. And I can't wait to see that. And Shadow Garden's one step closer to taking down the cult. Because they got so much valuable information out of this. It's kind of wild. The cult is a little screwed. To an extent with this. They got so much information with the cameras. So, I'm very curious to see what happens next week. As Cid's gonna wipe the floor with all of them, I bet. It's gonna be fun. But until then, guys, I hope you have a great day, week, month, and year. And I will see you guys next time. And also, Happy New Year if you're seeing this tomorrow. I'll see you guys next time.